Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast, episode 72.
Everyone wants happiness and success, and we know how to get you there. Come listen to the Leadership Society of Arizona as we teach a proven logic to help you simplify life, overcome challenges, and predict the future. You're listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast.
Welcome to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. My name is Chuck Solanas, and I'm joined by our special guest, Dr. Jacob Kashiwagi.
Hi, Chuck.
Hello. Well, I am excited to get into the topic of influence again. Of course, you are the person that published all about how influence doesn't really exist. You can't really influence people to do anything, and they can't really influence you. You are the arbiter of your fate, right? Is that correct?
True. I do believe everybody controls their own life.
Yeah. So this goes counter opposite to a lot of different people's thinking out there. So I just wanted to pepper you with a few different questions that I think a lot of our viewers would like some clarification on. So let's start with first question is, are parents responsible for the actions of their kids?
Well, with your introduction, the answer would have to be no.
Okay. Well, why is that?
Well, look. Well, let's ask another question. Are teachers responsible for the actions of their students?
They're not responsible for their actions. They're probably responsible for their teaching, being able to communicate it in a simple way. And then they decide for themselves how they want to process it and learn from it.
And that's probably the exact same with parents, right? Here's the thing, is every person you come in contact with and everything that you do, it does have an impact. There is an impact, right? If I go and drop this water bottle, the bottle is going to fall. You know, I go and punch somebody in the face or something like that, right? I'm actually going to be hitting somebody, and it's going to have an impact on their face. But what we really mean by no influence, or that parents aren't accountable for what their children do, is that even though what the parents do might have impact, the children determine what the impact is. The children determine what they hear from their parents. The children determine what they go out and do with that information, or with whatever has happened between them and their parents. And so the parents can't really be accountable for what their children do, because their children are their own people. But why would someone think the parents are accountable for it or responsible for it?
Well, I think they would think the parents would think that they're accountable because they spend so much time with their children. Like, if, say, for example, they didn't explain something in a way that they could understand. So like not walking in the middle of the road, not looking before they walk through the road, or not leaving kids alone in the bathtub. I mean, I feel like there is a definite cause and effect, and so parents would feel accountable for that.
Now, here's the thing. Parents are held by legality, accountability for taking care of their kids. But they can't be held responsible for their child's actions. So I'll explain to you. A baby is, left in a bathroom and drowned. Well, like, an infant can't possibly get out of the bathtub, right? It's something very tragic. But the parents are responsible and accountable for making sure that doesn't happen. But that's not like an action of the child. An action of the child would be like the child goes to school and hits another child. The parents can't be held accountable for that. Because that's something that the child did. Now, you make up a good point. Well, the parents spend the most time with their children. So shouldn't they be accountable for making sure the child learned and the child's actions don't go against what they taught them? Well, that would be like putting you in a cell with the axe murderer for a very long period of time and putting you in charge of teaching that axe murderer not to murder people. And then letting the axe murderer go and say, okay, because you were with Chuck and Chuck taught you clear principles of not to kill people, now we're going to hold Chuck responsible if you kill any more people and we let you go.
Well, not responsible, you would say accountable, right? Because we're mixing the two words. You're saying responsibility,
For me, responsibility or accountability is the same thing.
So, but you said that parents are responsible for the care of their children.
And accountable for it, legally.
Okay.
When a child is young, it's the parent's job to, to make sure the child is fed. It's the parent's job to, and if the child starves, legally the parent is accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If in Arizona, one of the most tragic things is leaving like a child in the car in hot temperatures, right? The parent really is accountable for taking care of the child because the child can't do it on their own. It's not an action of the child, it's the parent actually doing something for the child, which they're supposed to if they have a child.
So
right?
You're saying that line is blurred.
No, I'm saying the parents need to take care of their children, and they are accountable for that and responsible. But when the child goes out and does something, their actions, when they're not with the parents, or even when they are with the parents, but when the child goes and does something, the parents can't be held responsible or accountable for the actions of the child. The child goes and does something.
So with that, you're saying that if the child does something of their own volition, if they're acting based off of their own free will, and they start like screaming on the airplane, for example, which I have had the joy of experiencing.
Yeah.
So they're screaming on the airplane. You're saying that the parent isn't responsible for the screaming or shouldn't be accountable for the screaming. They should do what they can to try and hush the child or take care of whatever need that they have, but they cannot be accountable for the screaming. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I mean, they might be held responsible for even taking the child on a trip in the first place. That's something that they had control over that they actually did. But in terms of the child screaming, once the child is screaming, the parents cannot do anything about that, right? If they're able to do something that allows the child to calm down, well, that's great. But sometimes that's not even possible, as most parents will know.
Yeah. Okay, so all right, so let's go into a couple other examples. So you're saying that by the time the child goes to school and leaves the parental bounds, you're saying not responsible for the child's actions at school. Even if you taught them don't hit people, don't do anything to harm others, don't make loud noises during class, be quiet, all those different things. What the child does is up to themselves, right? It's not, and the repercussions shouldn't fall necessarily on the parents, but it falls on the child.
Definitely. Because look, and we've all seen a child coming from parents that taught the child not to hit, and the child will go and hit, right? You're going to say it's the parent's fault for that, even though maybe all the other children coming from this parent don't hit other people, right? There's a level of capability of each child, and that's why each child can only do what they can do. Not even the parents can influence that child's actions. And if the parents can't influence that child's actions, they can't be held accountable for that child's actions. They might be held accountable for not letting the school know that the child's going to hit someone, that the child has a tendency to do that. Or they might be accountable for putting the child in a situation where they're likely to get into a fight, or knowing information that they should have let the school know. But as pertaining to what the child actually does, you can't pin an accountability or responsibility, whichever word you want to use, on the parents. It's like, for example, because basically what you're saying is a parent has the ability to influence their child in some way. So let's take an extreme. Let's take a child who has very little mental capability, that they have some type of brain issue and they can't learn. Maybe they're stuck at like a kindergartner's IQ level. Even if you tell the parents, hey, you're responsible and accountable to teach this child how to act like a normal human being, in terms of just like they have a higher level of IQ and brain capability, no matter what the parents do, they won't be able to do that. It's physically impossible for that child, mentally impossible for that child. Well, every child has a different capability level. And if we could accurately see that, we'd realize every child can only learn so much, regardless of how good their parents are at teaching, regardless of how good their parents are at parenting. And so to require or to make hold accountable and responsible a parent for the actions of the child, when the children are individual people and have individual capabilities, that's a very tough one. And legally, there has even been a precedent that you can't hold the parents accountable for the action of the child. There have been cases where the parents have been charged and been held accountable for not releasing information, not being honest, with their, with the schools or with other people about what's going on in the child's life, what the child has access to, things like that. There's been times where the parents are been held negligent for allowing the child to be in a situation where the child could do something. But yeah, as pertain to their actions, if you even look legally, the law identifies that there is no influence in that. There's no accountability for the parents over what their child does.
Well, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It's challenging because a lot of these parents have like been they've been responsible and accountable for so long. It's hard to get away from that mentality that I'm no longer responsible, no longer accountable for them.
Well, this is a real tough one. It's a good thing and a bad thing, because it's a good thing in the sense that now parents or people who are beating themselves up on, on all the failures or the lack of capability of their children, thinking it's because of them, they're relieved of that. You can't be held accountable if your child, doesn't do something like, that you're expecting in terms of like popularity or impacting society or wealth, whatever it might be. But at the same time, if your child does something amazing, you can't necessarily take accountability and responsibility for that as a parent either. So that's the bad news of it. When your child turns out really well, it's not, you can't take accountability for that too with this paradigm.
Well, there's plenty of parents that do, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, I did that. I taught them everything they know, stuff like that.
They might have helped them along, but in the end, it was the child's accountability and control over their life that led them to something great, or led them to something not so great.
Yeah. Okay. Well, great. Hey, thank you so much for that clarification. Appreciate the time. Thank you so much, Dr. Jacob, and thank you listeners for listening and viewers for watching. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you for listening to the Logic and Life Coaching Podcast. It would be great if you could take a moment to write us a review. For any questions, comments, or topics that you would like to have addressed on the show, email the team at leadaz.org. To learn more about the Leadership Society of Arizona, visit us at leadaz.org.